What's going on, everybody? My name is LeakyTapsMan and this is another This Week in Gaming number 50, where I bring you up to date with everything in the world of video games. And for my half-century milestone, I guess you could call it, there has been quite a lot of interesting news. And I'll start with some news that concerns potential new Skyrim downloadable content. Now, details have surfaced of the new DLC due to the fact that in their 1.8 patch there was a lot of source code that alluded to future content. This is how the previous two got leaked actually, so we can assume this is legit. Regarding the DLC itself, it is going to be called Dragonborn. This is something that Bethesda trademarked back in September. It's going to be set on the island of Solstheim. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. And you may possibly get to ride dragons. The code at least mentioned flying dragons, so whether you're actually flying them yourselves or it's just like a set piece or something remains to be seen, but still a very interesting concept. There were a few more details in there, but those are the key fundamentals. When reached for comment, Bethesda remained silent, so take that as you will. But the whole premise, to me, sounds quite interesting, although it does kind of twist the knife for PlayStation 3 owners, seeing as they will never be able to play this. You will never get this. Alright, also this week some details on Dragon Age 3 emerged. Now this is straight from Bioware, so it's not a rumour, not speculation. Okay, the main character is still going to be limited to playing as just a human, like Dragon Age 2, but supposedly there's going to be a lot more customization. Previous saves will have a lot more of an impact, so choices you made in the previous games will affect the storyline more so. The game's going to be a lot bigger. They said that just one map in Dragon Age 3 is the size of the entire game of Dragon Age 2, which is a big plus because that was one of my main faults with Dragon Age 2, and it's something that I really pushed for in my Dragon Age 3 wishlist, so a big thumbs up for that. And although they didn't outright say it, they hinted at the ability to capture and run castles, which sounds quite interesting. A bit of a detour from the traditional Dragon Age gameplay, but one that I could see working, so fingers crossed that that works out like intended. And also they've said that it's the longest game that's ever been in pre-production at Bioware. So this includes the lore, the concept art, the design work, which again is encouraging news. Dragon Age 2 in particular was a rush job, and I'm really happy to see that they've gone back to basics, back to the drawing board, and looking at the points where Dragon Age 2 failed. So I am cautiously optimistic that this game is going to be very good. Alright, also this week, Criterion have been running their mouth. In a good way though. They have said that they're definitely going to return to the Burnout series at some point. They've recently been making Need for Speed games. I'm personally a much bigger fan of Burnout, so I'm happy to hear this. And they also said they'd like to try their hand at Road Rash, which I would be totally psyched for. I loved Road Rash back in the day, so to see a current iteration would be awesome. And EA actually re-trademarked Road Rash back in 2009, so it's entirely feasible, but I guess it's not Criterion's call. They can just try and give as much influence as they can. I also wouldn't mind seeing a sequel to the game Black. I thought that was quite good. A first-person shooter, so it was a bit out of their comfort zone, but they did a good job for their first game in the first-person shooter genre, so really I'm just anticipating whatever they do. Criterion, a very, very good developer. Okay, a couple of bits of news now that aren't very good. Firstly, The Last Guardian. This is, I guess you could call it the spiritual successor to Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. For the PlayStation 3 has been pushed back to at least 2014. Now, the source of this wasn't an official announcement, but rather through Amazon, who sent out emails to people that had pre-ordered the game. And whilst Amazon doesn't seem like a fully reputable source, they're normally pretty much bang on the money with these delays. They often get this information straight from the developers. They wouldn't just send this email out on a whim. And given the fact that The Last Guardian has just had like no real media attention in the last few years, doesn't bode well, in my opinion. I really wouldn't be surprised to see this game get cancelled, which is a shame because it looked very interesting. Or failing that, it could just be a launch title for the next PlayStation, which would be a far more desirable outcome. And another bit of not so great news, Microsoft have pretty much declared their intention to transition two of their biggest studios, Rare and Lionhead. These are the companies that made stuff like Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, Fable of course, so massive games. Anyway, they now want to transition those developers into quote-unquote entertainment as a service studios, which encompasses free-to-play online and casual experiences. You only have to hear the word casual to know that this is not a good direction to take. Don't get me wrong, I am not one of these elitist jerks that thinks that every game has to be the most hardcore it can be, because I'm not. But when you've got studios as talented as Rare and Lionhead, have them do what they do best, which is AAA quality games. They're popular franchises, just there is no real reason to tarnish these two developers. It seems like every other week Microsoft are doing something that I really don't agree with, and I'm getting to the point where I'm very much of the inclination that I am just going to get a PlayStation 4 next gen and not the next Xbox, because Rare in particular are one of my favourite developers. If you watch my videos you'll know this, and to see the route that Microsoft have taken with them, not just this whole entertainment as a service thing, but in general, they've thrown their reputation down the crapper, and it kind of sickens me to see that. All I can do is hope that Nintendo find some money and buy them back. But once again, Jimmy's status very much rustled. And finally, a very small bit of news, but it regards Mass Effect 4, so I'm sure some of you will be interested. When speaking of the game, Bioware said that it will pretty much pick up where Mass Effect 3 left off, and the game will no longer focus around Commander Shepard, but rather a whole new protagonist in a very, very different context, as they worded it. Is actually quite a refreshing change for Bioware to be so transparent with their development nowadays. I think making this kind of information public stops them making any major gaffes, and it can't really give license for the consumer to complain that much if Bioware actually take on board the criticisms that have been thrown their way. Okay, so that pretty much summarises everything that's gone on this week in the world of video games. This week, what can you expect on my channel? You can expect my Games Needing Sequels Part 4 and 5, which will be platformers and shooters respectively. Beyond that, I will finish that mini-series with Part 6, which is just miscellaneous games. And beyond that further, no real plan of action, but I will figure it out when I get there. Thanks for watching. If you could like, that would be much appreciated. Goodbye for now.